Hi guys, it's Ben again from Nerf Mods for Beginners, and today we're going to be looking at the Alphahawk. This video is going to be a little bit different because I have had to remove all the screws before we start. First of all, when you buy it in a packet, your priming little bars are not connected. What happens when you do connect them is it locks it into the shell. So what I had to do with mine is I had to cut the bar off and pull it out from the sled on the inside. That's why all my screws are already removed, which I normally like to remove them as I go through, so we can speak a little bit about the blaster. But if you've already put in your priming tabs, I only put one into mine because I knew I was going to open it up to do this, and eventually I'm going to turn it into an air blaster. If you remove both of them, you're going to have to cut one, and your internals will stick to whatever side that you cut. For example, I had the priming bar on the left because I'm right-handed, so I prime with my left. When I took it out, the internal stuck to the left-hand side of the shell. And it'll be the same if they're on the right. So you cut off, I would suggest cutting off the left-hand side, which is the side with all the screws, so your internals sit flat inside, because after I'd done this, I had to reassemble all the internals and put them back together. And at this stage, there is no mod guides or anything for this at the moment, so I had to go by feel and by memory on roughly what a what a Spectre looks like on the inside. So, like I said, you need to cut one off. I would suggest cutting off the side with the screws and leaving the one on the other side. But I do not know yet how this will prime with one tab in place, but we're going to find out. And also the reason why I pulled it apart too is because I have no idea on springs for this, but the Australian nerfturf 7.5 kilo strong arm spring fits, and it looks pretty much identical except for being beefier. The strong arm spring also does, you said you've got strong arm, fire strike. I've used this one on the zombie strike bow, as also works in the Spectre, and there are other things, but I'll put a link up to Australian Nerfturf's website so you can see what they got, how much they cost, and what else they work in. Okay, when you're undoing the screws, there is two different sizes. You got little, which go along the tack rail side, and you got all the rest of the one size, so if they get mixed up, it's not going to be hard to work with. The stock is one piece. It looks glued in place. There's no screws to remove out of it. So what I'm going to do is remove one side, put that to the side, but I don't have to worry because there's no screws in it. And this is what it looks like. So first of all, if you want to, you can remove that stock. Sit straight in the same way as a long strike one does, but a long strike one does have screws in it. And you can also remove the handguard if you choose to. It's a bit like the one on the Flip Fury, where you can pull it out if you don't want it in place. But I'll leave it all in because I like the way the shell looks. This one out of the box, I took it out and started firing it straight away. I was getting 5 to 10 meters out of it, which was, even as a grey trigger, is quite pathetic. 5 to 10 meters equates to 15 to 30 foot. So, yeah, like I said, pretty damn pathetic. So I had to cut that with my Dremel to get that off so I could access the shell. But I have the one spare one that I'll put back in place. So, in here is where this part locks in place. This is the wrong side, but the little void here gets caught in that clip where the red is. So I'm just trying to do this. Gets caught in there. And what I'll do is I'm going to hold this on camera for a sec so you can get a good idea of all the internals. You catch your trigger. You can see how it all moves there. The trigger releases the cylinder here, which you can remove that if you want to, but I don't see any point to it. It releases that. And the rest is your basic turret. Geared system, return springs, little one up the top here, and major one here for the sled. That is how you prime it. And the catch, it goes back and catches onto there, and it only works one way with that, which is kind of like what the strong arm does if you've seen the strong arm video. So I'll prime that a little bit back and you can see where the hook will actually sit inside the trigger catch. It will only work one way. So it's important when we put this back in, we put it in the right way. So let's pull it down, pull it apart, and swap the spring in on it. As of now, which is almost March 2017, this is the only accustrike blaster in Australia. I'm taking this off just so it's a bit easier on camera. So you got trigger, you got your catch. You can pop that out if you want to have like a skeleton type handle, but I like the rubber personally. Let's see how we get this out. This is the first time I've ever dealt with one of these, and it looks like it pretty well lifted out in one part, which it does. Turret's out, but that's easy to put back in. And the thing you gotta remember is this priming bar sits behind the trigger when you go to put it back together. And that part is like the one on the strong arm. I've found that before, and it sits in here on that there, so don't worry about that. We'll put it back together when we're up to it. Alright, so we're going to try to avoid the plastic bit to get rid of the resistance and unhook that spring. There you go. Is there one on the other side? No, there isn't, just one, which pulls your slide back. So just trying to work around that the orange plastic arm there. There we go. So this is the first for me, so I'm just looking how I pull this apart without damaging it. Alright, what I think I'm going to do with this, rather than pulling everything apart, oh hold on, it all lifts off, never mind. And the catch here will turn, by the look of it, to come off and around. That's nice and easy. And you just unwind it. There's a little rib on the end here, there you go, which is a lot like the knife finders like that. The strong arm's got that little ridge for the spring to sit in, and it seats in. And like I said, that is the way it goes here, because this part connects into there, and these are the springs. I stretched a little bit pulling it out, but that is the lovely Australian spec spring, which is, yeah, about 20% softer than the American version, and the 7.5 kilo Nerf turf one compared to that. Alright, what we're going to do is we're going to wind this on like you do in your strong arm or your Spectre mods. Pull that down and clipped in place. I will check on the plunger, see how that seal is. Pretty good, there's not a lot of wobble in now. I wouldn't really worry about E-tape. If you can hear it, it's got a good air seal already. I don't know if that comes up. So what I'll do is I'll leave that the way it is. I won't worry about E-taping it. But we've got to get all this back together now. Which was... memory of the wings are out that way. God, it looks like something out of Minecraft. Was that way, wasn't it? Yeah, it was that way. Because I'm doing this for the first time, I should have taken pictures. Alright. And that went under and in like that by memory. How did that fit? It fit like that. Like that, so it pulls it against the resistance of the back plate there. You see how that's, the tabs have locked it in place. Alright, I'm going to put this back in. So you can re-lube it if you want. I'm not going to worry about doing it because not long after this video I'm going to be ripping it apart to put an air blaster into it. I've got an XPZ to go in this tank here, and I'm going to run the pump grip, the air lead through here, and I'll just have it connected by a pump, because I think this is a good looking blaster and it's the only reason why I wanted it. So we've got to hook this spring back up, and this one hooked up under here, under here, around into there, which is your return to pull it back. So even if you do get around the wrong way, it's not going to cause your blaster any problems. Yep. It's not going to cause you any dramas, because all it does is like the spring that returns a slide on a strong arm. That's all it's going to do. There is a little spring here that sits on that, but I'll put that, put that in place now if it'll stay. That just pushes off the shell. The inside of the shell here is a lot like a Raider or Rampage. A lot of it is made so it sits straight in place. I'm going to slide that underneath, between the screw post and that trigger. I'll just knock that out of place. And I'm really hoping this fires when it's all done, because I don't have any reference guide rather than just all the internals falling apart when I opened it. Trigger's seated in. Trigger catch is in working. Trigger seated. Everything looks in place. The curve of the plunger is there, so it's going to lock into that part there, so that's correct. Little return spring goes in here. Pull it back away from the turret. And the turret goes back in, which is very similar to your Strong Arm, your Flip Fury, or your Spectre. And the turret locks in here in a little hex piece. You need to get that in place, otherwise it's not going to work for you. There we go. Now it's in. So it's all locked in place, and I'm hoping when I put this together it's going to fire. I'm going to reattach the last priming nub that I have. It looks like it should. Trigger catch, trigger, rotation mech is all in place. Get the trigger mech back in. It does sit on the outside here, same way as the Strong Arm does. That little indicator there, so it doesn't sit inside the housing, it sits on the outside. And that's also the same on a Cyclone Shock as well, where it sits outside the back of the shell, but you don't see it because of the slide. And so we attach the stock back up. I made that look harder than I needed to. Alright, other half of the shell. Normally when it goes back easy like that, hopefully won't have a problem, because it means every place is sitting inside where it's made to sit. Alright, fun bit of screwing it back together. So like I said, the small screws go along there, the 3 holes, and the rest all seem to be the same length. So that's one of the small ones there. Screwdriver's not magnetised. Boring bit, so you can fast forward if you want to. The accustrike, new accustrike line, I've personally tried the darts out, which are the accurate darts. I've tried them out in my brass breech long shot. They sound terrible and they go about 10 meters. I was hoping that there might be something special to put in a high power blaster, but I don't know how to describe it other than it sounds like a squid farting. But the only way I can describe how an accustrike dart goes in a high powered blaster. And I'll shoot one off when this is all done. Other than that, hopefully this is a nice and easy spring swap. So it did feel pretty dry in the cylinder, so I would give it some lube if you did want to plan on keep on using it. But like I said, my internals will be pulled out later on when I go to do a different build in it. What I'm going to do is now, I've done up the screws around the back here, so I'm going to try it now and see how it goes. I'm priming it with a screwdriver. and it worked perfectly. Let me get a dart and show you. Sorry, I just had to grab a couple of darts. I'm just holding this sensitively because I don't have any screws in around here. All my screws are only in at the back. There goes one now. And that is locked and primed. And how does it fire? Oh, very good. Very nice. Goes a hell of a lot better than what it did in stock form. Now, to expand on what I said about sound like a squid farting. That's accustrike dart. This is a 16 kilo nerfturf spring brass breech long shot. It's my favourite blaster. It's called Vera. So she's called Vera. These darts are such a pain because the heads are so big and they rub on the brass. So I have to breech load one to show you. Accustrike going into a sleeper breech. See if you can hear it. Didn't make the noise. But getting back to what we're working on. This 7.5 kilo Australian nerfturf spring in this does not only work, it makes it not suck. Loaded, dart in. You won't even see it travel through the barrel, it's going that hard. That spring works really, really well. I'm really impressed with what it does now. I'll leave you guys to do the rest of the screws up yourself because you don't need me for that. But thanks again for watching. Please like, share and subscribe for more videos. And thank you again.